stop patching your business, build a team that scales. Most brokers think the problem is leads. It's not. The real problem is time. And the best way to get your time back is to hire an underwriter who can help you with a big chunk of your file processing. In this episode, I talked to Nate Atkin, and this is episode 2 of the $100 million journey. And right now, the problem that Nate's trying to solve is how do I get back time so I can continue to grow? Because he's very good at marketing and he's good at getting business. And so what he needs to do is find a great underwriter. And so in this episode, we dive into where do you go look for a great underwriter? There's probably some places that you haven't thought of. When you do find that underwriter, how do you interview them? What questions do you ask? We dive into, and I give very specific examples on the right kind of questions to ask to help you find the right candidate. And then finally, we discuss compensation. And I really think if you're thinking about hiring or you want to hire in the next 6 months, you're going to want to listen to this episode. If you're an amazing underwriter, Nate put it out there, but you can definitely reach out to Nate, as I think he'd be a great dude to go work for. Hey, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokering podcast. And each week we bring you guests to help you scale your mortgage business. I'm doing this series with Nate on how to scale his business from 39 million last year to 100 million. And each month we're going to do an update on where he's at in his pipeline, as well as what problem that we're working through on solving. And I'm very excited about this series, as I think it's like getting to look over the shoulder of what we're doing. And you can apply what works and what doesn't. So I'm not saying to you this is the only way to do it. I'm just sharing with you my own personal experience approaching hundreds and hundreds of brokers and looking under the hood of a lot of businesses. So I will give you all the knowledge that I have. And Nate's a very smart dude who runs a very capable businesses outside of the mortgage space. And so between the two of us, we're going to give you all the value that we can so that you can leave and go, I'm going to apply this, or I'm going to avoid that because I've heard you guys talk about it. So that's the goal of this series. If you like it, hit him up, say hi to him, shoot him a note. I know he'd appreciate it. And same with me. If you want to find me on social, hit me up. And what do you think of these episodes? I'd love to hear from you. Before I jump into this episode, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ownwell. Ownwell is an amazing tool for Canadian mortgage brokers to create conversations with their database around their home equity, around their buying power, whether they can refinance. It basically creates an equity report that gets sent out on a monthly basis. The open rates are 60 to 80%. Clients absolutely love them. And it creates conversations. Check them out at ownwell.ca and check out this conversation with Nate. Hey, Nate, welcome back to the show.
Hey, all right, Scott, good to be back.
I'm excited to have this discussion. So this is episode 2 of the $100 million journey with Nate Atkin. And before we get into, go back and listen to the first episode. We really do a deep dive into Nate's business, where he's come from. We'll put a link to the previous episode in this episode. So just so you're aware, you can always find it. But maybe give us a quick, at the time of this recording, it's January 20th. I'm going to start every these episodes with a pipeline update since the goal is growth. So we'll do updates throughout, and then you guys can kind of look over the shoulder. And then we're going to talk about today, you're in the process of hiring an underwriter, the kind of questions you're asking, what kind of process you're using, and then compensation. And our whole goal with this, if you're listening, is that Nate and I are going to have a discussion. I'm going to share some perspectives and ideas of what I've seen work and not work and the reasons why. Nate's going to decide what works best for him in his business. And then you guys get to watch how that plays out in real life. But also you listening can take this and copy whatever makes sense for you. We want to make the whole goal of this is just that you leave going, okay, I'm going to copy this part and not that part. That makes sense? All right. So give me an update, brother. Where are you at right now? January 21st. What does the pipeline look like right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be back, Scott. Pipeline is actually happy to report that, interestingly enough, I had a file the first time that came in the same day. I submitted it, got it approved, and got it broker complete within the same day. That was awesome.
Amazing.
That was the first. Yeah, that was the first for me. So where we're at right now, we got about $1.2 million broker complete, and got another 800,000 submitted. Got about $4,900,000 in pre-approvals we're looking at, and got another $3 million in applications received.
Okay, so we'll check into those periodically. Yep. And again, this is 20 days into the year. All right, so right now, last time we chatted, where you're at is, okay, we need to get some of Nate's time back. You are great at generating business. And we'll talk in future episodes about some of the stuff that's working for you, but you need time. And so the key is underwriter. So walk me through where you're at in the process and what you've been doing, and then we'll discuss from there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this chat, Scott, because I need your coaching here at the underwriter hiring part. It's been fun. Like I said last time we spoke, I've learned a lot from the people I've spoken to and interviewing them and finding out if they're going to be a good fit for us, for me, and likewise, that mutually reciprocated relationship. But it's kind of sparked some really cool questions that I've thought of as I sat back and reflected and said, well, there's a lot. I thought I was prepared, with my interviewing process, but then realized that there's other things I really want to dive deep onto. And I came up with kind of a list of questions. I thought that, hey, it would be great for me to ask you what you think about these questions. And maybe there's a better way I can formulate them, or maybe you can elaborate on them and have better questions, right? So if you're cool with that, I'd love to kind of ask you about that.
Yeah, let's get it. I'm going to ask one question before before the questions is, where are you doing your job postings? Because like it's kind of like the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
And what has the response been like on those job postings that you've been doing? Because that's like, that helps kind of go from here.
First off, anybody who's listening who who wants to reach out to me.
Honestly, maybe you're listening to this going, I want to be an underwriter for somebody who's doing $100 million a year. Yeah. This could be that's very clever.
And you want to have a lot of fun.
I like what you did there.
Yeah, and if you want to have a lot of fun, you want to step up your game in life in general, reach out, man, because we're gonna kick some ass. Everyone I've ever worked with, we kick ass. So anyhow, question is where. So first off, internally within our brokerage, we have a resource inside BRX, which is phenomenal. For anybody who doesn't know, as a brokerage, we have all sorts of resources internally, where whether it be fulfillment or underwriting or what have you. So internally with the brokerage, and then also without crossing any lines, being very diplomatic about potentially reaching out to lender partners or banks that may have a relationship with, where there might be underwriters that have expressed interest in potentially not working for the bank or the lender anymore. So there's some opportunities there. And also too, just a little bit of advertising, nothing major, but I try to stay away from LinkedIn because a lot of it I find to be kind of a pain in the ass. But Indeed is really the only one I focused on that is outside of those other two avenues.
I love this. This is the first discussion we're getting to the question. So what I've seen work, and the lender partners is absolutely a great avenue to explore. One of the best underwriters that we found when I was working with Jules was somebody who worked at a lender. Here's the thing I would think about. If they're going to leave anyway, we might as well, if they're thinking about that, they want to change. And if we can get them, fantastic. And so having that discussion with somebody that you're working with, the only downside is you do lose that. If it's an underwriter that you currently work with, you lose them on the lender side. And so that happened to us, but
that's a risk I'm willing to take.
And that's a good problem to have. So there is definitely one angle would be, is there somebody on the lending side? Now, the pros and cons, I think, of hiring somebody as a lender. If somebody worked at a lender, they typically are more wired for an employee relationship. They probably don't want to go out and be you. They don't want to be you. They've already shown with their behavior that they're the kind of person who wants to work on part of a team. So you can get a really good team oriented. And I know like Renee Hughes has hired almost all ex-bankers. I know James Lowen hired a lot of ex-bankers. So some of these people have very good teams. They hire ex-people that work, not just bankers, ex-lender, people that work at lenders. And so you get this person, you can create a great win-win for both of you. Now, the only downside I would say to having somebody is that they may not have they can underwrite, but they may not have the robust knowledge of underwriting across all the other lenders. So like they'll obviously know their previous lender if they worked at whatever, institution, but sometimes there can be a gap. And so as long as you have a plan for how to fill that, and if they have the motivation to fill it, that's the other piece, then it's not a problem. If you get the right person, then they're going to be like, I want to learn these other lender partners as well. And so that would be the thing. So I think that's a good idea in terms of the other thing I would say about this, if I'm being really practical, is most of their phone lines are recorded. And so when we hired the person that we ended up taking, lender partners, we love you, but this is how it worked out. I said, hey, can we talk on your cell? Right. I'm not going to have that conversation because,
good point.
I just, because here's what I did. I stepped into it. I said to them like, hey, like, I know, like, because they were absolutely a beast at the place they worked. Like they crushed so many files. Like this person's got work ethic. So they already showed me how they worked with me. I didn't have to. I was like, they got work ethic. And then the second thing was, I'm like, how much, at a scale of 1 to 10, how much do they working here? And she's like, 9.5. And then I'm like, is this line recorded? She's like, yes. I'm like, okay. So you want to take that. You want to be respectful. I'm not saying everybody here should go and steal their lender partners, but the reality is that the lenders will find someone else too. Like people turn over, they go to different lenders. And so the thing is that if a lender loses a underwriter to a high producing broker, they're probably going to get a lot of business from that broker because that lender they already know that relationship. So it's actually versus if that underwriter goes to a different institution, there is it's dead. There's no more opportunity. So I think it's actually, I'm making the case that it's better. So that would be, I think that's a smart idea.
Great.
And then in terms of posting, so you said LinkedIn, have you done anything on Indeed, or are you still just kind of planning that out?
Indeed is the one that I'm going to prepare. I've already been preparing kind of how to post it on there, but that's the one platform that I'm thinking of going to, not LinkedIn.
Right. Okay. So what I found when it comes to these online platforms that you're doing postings on is that I like to put an extra step in place for people in order to make sure they're not resume spamming me. because sometimes people will apply for, and then you spend a lot of time sifting through resumes of people that they're not really serious. They're just applying because they click the button. It's very easy to apply for a lot of jobs through these platforms as the employee. And so what I like to do is in the description somewhere say, hey, if you're interested in this, you need to go here and fill out this form or something. And then that extra step, we used to put links in the forms. We can't put, I don't think they let us in most cases now, but I would say to them, hey, and it's just an extra, it's basically, if you have hustle, you're going to show me, right? Like put a little obstacle in place.
Okay.
And if you do that obstacle, then it's like, okay, now I'm going to prioritize looking at your resume because you're serious about this position versus someone who isn't. And if they don't think they should do it and I'm like, you're also showing me the kind of person you are that you're probably not going to follow a process here either. Right.
Yeah, good.
In the hiring.
And it's an internal filter for us too, right? Which is great. I love that. Yeah. Thank you for that, Scott.
Put a little and you can have a little quiz on there, or just like, hey, thanks for applying. We got a few questions we want to know about you specifically, and then that goes into a Google form or something.
A type form,
and then
thing, right?
Yeah, type form, and now you can capture that. So that would be my suggestions on this.
Amazing.
And then of course we got some internal resources that at Bricks that you could use, but I mean you were going to want to cast as wide a net as possible because you want to get the best person possible. And I've made the mistake of the you'll do hire. It's like, are you available? Yes, you'll do. And don't do that. Yeah. Right? I'm sure you've got other businesses. Tell me your experience in hiring for other businesses. What have you seen?
Most definitely, same thing, right? Whether it be whether we're hiring in office staff or whether it's going to be field staff, same kind of thing. We tend to always look. Okay, early on, I made the mistake of not doing this, but now I find the most effective is what you just explained in mortgage brokering, which for me would have been, for example, picking people from other companies that have a similar experience. Right? I'm trying to be diplomatic with that, but yeah, right. So I already know maybe they've expressed interest or made comments in passing where they're thinking about leaving, or they love to have a similar role somewhere else, or what have you. Where it's like, oh, okay, great, like that opens the door for discussion. But I already know that the experience is there; they're familiar with. Whether it be products, whether it be clients, whether it be, market, whatever it might be, right? So yeah, same kind of thing.
The proximity hire, which I've done numerous times and it's never worked out, versus putting in some sort of a barrier to hire. And some of the people I've had still work for me from 6 years, we made them go through some hoops and they're incredible. Like the way they showed up in the hiring process, not surprisingly, is the way they've showed up ever since. And that's made it really good. So, okay, now I think, let's say you've done this, you've got your funnel, you put some kind of a barrier, especially for these employment companies. And then the next step is questions. So walk me through kind of what you're thinking in terms of questions, and we can go back and forth on that.
Yeah, so I've got them into categories, right? So essentially, for example, the first category would be like underwriting experience, right? So I would ask them to walk me through the last complex file that you underwrote from start to finish, right? So just kind of get some information from them. Are they vague, or can they be specific on it? Another question could be, which lenders have you directly underwritten files with? So if they're not from a bank or from a lender and they've been an underwriter for another brokerage or what have you, then they can tell me, right? Is it A lenders, monolines, alts, BFS? Like what do they handle? Do they have private experience, that kind of stuff, right? What income types are you strongest with, right? For some folks, some underwriters might be T4 commission only. Don't give me a self-employed person. I don't want to deal with any rental income, or I don't want to deal with, right? So that's important for me to understand as well. And then also too, something along the lines of like, what's your process when a file doesn't fit on paper?
Right.
Explain to me, how you handle that, right? So that's kind of like underwriting stuff. Then I've got other questions pertaining to, deal protection and problem solving, I call it. So first question might be, tell me about a deal that almost died. What went wrong and how did you save it?
Right.
Something like that, right? How do you stress test a file before submission? What's your approach when a lender pushes back or declines? I want to know if they're going to say, "Oh, no problem, we find another fit somewhere else," or we ask them why they declined it. What's the reason for it? And so I want to find out that it's not like, well, they declined it. We're in trouble now. No, I want to get their mindset.
Yeah, you want to see how they problem solve and how they
problem solve on their own. Do I have to hold their hand, or are they somebody that's like, I've done this several times, I'm good. Speed, volume, and capacity is another category where I would ask them, what volume have you personally managed at peak? Kind of want to know what you can handle, right? Like if someone says to me, I can handle 2 files at a time, or someone says, I can handle, 15 files at a time. I could do multiple, right? So I'd like to know that. Another one might be, how do you prioritize files when everything is urgent? You asked me that last week, right? You asked me that last week. Is everything a fire or, right? So also, what systems have you worked in? I got Filelogics, Velocity, Finmo, Zoho. Like what have you worked with? I like to know that because I know what we work with. So I want to know what they're familiar with. And then also client and realtor interactions, right? So it's a huge one for my brand. I want to know, how comfortable are you speaking directly with clients and realtors? I want to know, how do you explain difficult conditions or bad news? How are you going to deliver that to someone, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it may be me doing that, but I like to know kind of how they handle it. I like to know their capacity. And then finally, ownership standards and growth mindset is my last category that I asked. What does a clean file mean to you? What frustrates you most about brokers you've worked with? What does success in this role look like to you in 12 months? Things like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, these are good. Well, let's go through those categories again. So
Yep.
the first one, what was the category? Remind
Sure.
me.
The first one was just standard, like real underwriting experience, I would call it.
I love this question, and there's a concept in interviewing where they call it STAR: situation, task, action, result. And so what you want to do is get them to give you, like, if they speak in general terms, it's not good. Like, you want detail so that when they give the detail, they're going to display their knowledge, right? So if they speak vaguely, I would push them to be like, give me an example of a file. Like, you want to always talk specifically about a file, not just in general. What would you do when you get a decline? Give me an example of a decline. Why was it declined? And then how did you manage to turn it into a approval?
Nice. Yeah.
And then they're going to have to give you an example. And then in that, it should be mostly stories. A lot of it should be stories that then you'll be able to, in listening to the story, you'll be like, okay, I like how they problem solve. And are they using blaming language? I mean, I think they're not going to get past your hiring process, but are they the type of person who blames others? Well, it's the lender's fault, this person's fault. Or do they have ownership language? Like, that's a key. I think you'd pick up on that really fast. And so I think anything to do with the lending is give them specific. The other thing you could do is you could give them a scenario and ask them, like, a complex file that you've seen, and say, how would you solve this problem? What would you do with it? So I got to and then it's like, oh, because that's also putting them on the spot. And so they're going to feel some pressure from that, because it's like, if I'm telling my story, the thing about it is, like, so one of those three questions, if it was you gave them a scenario and tell me how you problem solve it, it's a lot more pressure than a story that I've repeated a few times and I know the outcome, and I can make myself look like a hero.
Of course.
Versus show me, don't just tell me like what you do with this, right?
Great.
So that, I think that would be another way I would possibly on the underwriting side. What was the next category you had?
Excellent. Next category was problem solving. Kind of rolled into a little bit of what you said there, but for me it was I guess similar. Tell me about a deal that almost died. What went wrong? How did you save it? So that was kind of what you mentioned a second ago already. And maybe what's your approach when a lender pushes back or declines?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing.
Again, so give me a specific example so that it's like with that, like, give me an example of where a lender, what did they say? And then what was your response? And the more detailed, typically the more, if it wasn't detailed, they didn't solve the problem, someone else did. Like, that's a cue. If they can't actually answer it, that means probably the broker that they're working for picked up the phone, solved the problem, and they were just told it's solved.
That's cool.
And so if they can give you detail about it, you'd be like, that's actually a cue to me that they were the one who solved the problem.
No, that's interview gold. That's great. Thank you. I'll definitely dig right in there. That's super valuable.
And if they use language we versus I. So if they say we did this, we solved the problem, they're bringing in their previous broker with them. And it's like versus, and that's okay. But like, or was it an I language where it's ownership language of, I picked up the phone, I called the lender, this is what I pushed back. Like, you're seeing somebody who takes ownership of that role and will do everything they can versus someone who's like, well, it's like we have a problem. It's like, no, you have a problem. And like, how, like, instead of flipping it that way.
I just thought of something on that actually as well, which is a good point. It's if somebody responds with, let's say, for example, somebody else addressed the problem where, Steve did this, Steve did that, but I'm super happy and willing and capable to also learn how to do that. I'd be comfortable doing it. So it's almost like they're being honest that someone else addressed it in their previous role, but they'd like to be able to, or they'd be comfortable doing it. That would be real cool, because then
that would be good too, though, because it also shows them they're not snowing you or basically pretending that they know more than they do. And then what was the next category you had?
Yeah, next category was speed, volume, and capacity. Basically, like, what volume have you personally managed that peak, right? We really want to get an idea of, like, what are they capable of in this kind of category.
That what can affect volume is how much of the file they're doing. So are they just hitting the submit button? So when you get to this one, what you want to ask is, say to them, okay, well, like, what's the most number of files that you've been able to close in a month? And then what's an average month? So you get the peak. You can ask what's a typically a low month, and then what you want to ask is, like, where do you pick up the file? Like, right now, if they're working for someone else, what are they doing? The document collection on the front end, getting the app ready so that the broker can then do the discovery call and then hitting the submit button, or like where? Because if they're only doing a very small piece of it. It can be a high number, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, this person's amazing. But they're only expecting to do the last 20. They're at the 20 yard line, and they've only got to get it across. You've already done 80 yards.
This is super valuable because I can elaborate on something here that will also help our listeners to understand the context of where we are here. Is that when I first came to you and talked to you about, where am I right now, where I think I need to go, before we even started this podcast in general, you mentioned to me, I was talking to you about how I was like piecemealing fulfillment. And like there was someone I was working with and there was someone else I was going to work with. And you kind of said, I think you could skip all that and go right to hire an underwriter. And that was exactly the case where, for example, the person that was going to be doing fulfillment, they were going to just pick up a file where it's already been underwritten, prepared, submitted, came back conditionally approved. Whereas the way that I have everything already done and prepared, they basically have almost nothing to do after that. And they were going to just,
if you do a good job on that, it's really, they're just babysitting it to the end.
They're just nursing it along, which is really not that much, right? So that's a good point that you mentioned. It's really important to identify with folks, where exactly are you picking this file up or starting it, right?
Right. And then that way you can map that to what you're doing. And if it's a good, also, even if they're not doing, let's say they're only doing a part now, but you want them to do more, you can still, in the expectations, you can explain that to them. Right. Yeah. But also it gives you a reference point for this number they've given you, because again, if you're just doing signing packages, man, it can be a lot of files and then, so then in terms of technology piece, what was the next category? I love this, by the way, that you have categories. I think this is really helpful for our listeners and as well as for creating structure for your great interviews.
Yeah. It was just really kind of trying to understand what systems you've worked with. So whether it be like tech stack wise or more specifically submission platforms, right? Like we as brokers we have several different ones. Well, there's basically a couple. There's basically 3 that anyone uses. But I really want to know, like, if we're using Finmo, are you only familiar with Velocity, right? Have you used Zoho? Have you only used a different CRM platform? What tech are you using, right? That's really basically what I know. More specifically, underwriting tech and submission tech. But I'd like to know that because there could be a big learning curve there for us.
Right. And I always think, like, if somebody comes on with another set of skills that you didn't expect, so let's say they have some great other tech skills, I call it a gift with purchase. So you hired them for one thing, but they have this other skill set that you get the benefit of. And so somewhere in here, you want to find out, and it might be tech skills. But on the tech piece, I'll tell you a mistake I made once. So I hired somebody who worked for a very busy broker. I did no underwriting questions. I'm like, oh, you work for this person? My God, and they're busy. Like, this person was a really busy broker. And I thought, well, I'm going to be easy. My files are straightforward, be super clean. Amazing. They come to work for me. And this was when we were in an office, and she sits down at the computer and I see her working on Filogix. And I'm like, oh my God, she has not done this very much, because if she did, she'd be much faster. And so if you're using, what I would do is, if they say they're proficient at Finmo, open it up. Show me. Okay. I just want to show me how it works, man. Show me where you go find this. And if they really know it, they will find it, right? It prevents people from hiding behind, oh yeah, I'm good with all that stuff. I would definitely test them on.
Oh, man.
And when I saw it, and then here's what happened. So she came into work. I was like, oh my God, I think I made a massive mistake. And then she's like, I think I'm going to, she lived at like 40 minutes, 5 minutes, about an hour away. And she's like, I think we're going to sell my house. We're going to move closer to here. So work. I had to fire her the next day. I'm like, I can't let you so then I hired her, and then I fired her the next day, and I felt terrible, and it was my fault because I didn't do the proper testing. But the reality is that her skill level was very basic, and I assumed, based on the fact that it was like association. It's like, oh, you were with this person, but they didn't let her do a whole lot. So now I didn't dig enough, and so then and if I would have saw her using the software, I would have been like, oh my God, what's going on? Because I can make it hum. But that was a very obvious thing.
Great lesson on not making assumptions, right? Somebody can work for a $500 million producer, but not know how to be proficient at the platform, right? Excellent.
Yeah, because they were never allowed to touch it. And so it doesn't mean that you can't hire them, but you should test it. And so I think having them, if they say they're good at it, say, okay, show me, where do you find the credit bureaus? If you were looking for, show me this, even just bounce around, share your screen. You'll really quickly, you'll know if they actually can do it or not. And if somebody's listening to this who's going to be applying for a job, you just be aware, you're going to jump through. It's going to be a fantastic career opportunity, but there are going to be some hoops to jump through in order to make sure you know that it's a good fit.
Yeah, and you know what, too, for the folks who are qualified and love what they want to do and do want to grow, it's they're more than proud to let's jump on right now. I'll show you what I can do. Right, I love it. That's excellent.
Yeah, the person who's really perfect, they'll be like, no problem, show me, and then they'll the one underwriter that I'd hired, I remember many years ago, the most files he had funded in a month was 67.
Mm.
67
That's
files. And
outrageous.
I was like, oh my, and he took care from submission on. And that's still a lot of files. And
Wow.
he was a monster, but he would just sit there and then he'd set a reminder for himself, waiting on the approval, like, 2 hours, and he'd play Minesweeper. And then as soon as the ping would come up, hey, where's my file? Back to Minesweeper. Like, he was a robot.
Wow.
Anyway, that was a whole other lesson that I learned. But okay, so what was the next category you had? Because I want to get into compensation too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm talking about how that's all structured for sure. It was just the comfort and so client and realtor interactions, right? Like, how comfortable are you speaking directly with clients and realtors? Not that they're going to have to, but I'd like to know if that's part of their tool belt or not, right?
Okay, here's what I would do in this. I love this question too. Is I would give them a scenario and say, okay, I'm the client. What are you going to say to me? And you're going to put this could be a pressure cooker, but I tell you, man, the person who gets through this, you're going to be like, you're going to have an amazing person. So if you've got to have a tough, because you say, how are you handling tough conversations? Oh, I'm good at that stuff. And then if you say, give me an example, they can come up with an example that they thought of. But what's harder is to say, okay, you got a client who now everything's done. Give them a scenario. Tell me, I'm ring, I'm on the phone. What do you say to me? And put it's not going to be either. They may be like, but that's okay. Look, I'm not asking. You can even say them. I'm not trying to stress you out. I just want to see what your natural instinct is. And don't worry, I'll coach you. If you end up getting this job, I'll coach you on how to do it. But I just want to see what your natural instinct is without any coaching or scripting from me. And then role play and make them do it. And they'll be like, holy, and you'll see a lot in that. Right. Yeah. So I would do that with the client conversation if they're going to be talking to clients.
That's great. I love it. Yeah.
Okay. What was the last category?
The last category is on ownership standards and growth mindset. So things like what frustrates you about brokers you've worked with? What does success in this role look like to you in fill in the blanks, right? 6 months, 12 months, a year, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is great. That feels like a values almost. There is a values piece because you can have somebody who checks all the other boxes, but you don't have the same values. Mm-hmm. And this feels like you're a growth mindset guy. You're an ownership guy. So that last one, I'd make somehow values-based questions so that you get a sense of okay, are we matched on values? Because everything else could be great, but if you're not matched on values, it could be a problem. So let's chat about compensation. So give me your thoughts on what you're thinking, and then we can go through. Again, I'll give you different scenarios. You're going to get to pick what makes sense in the end, but I'd love to hear what you're doing there.
Yeah, this is something I haven't pinned down exactly yet because you and I spoke about the advantages and disadvantages of different ways to structure it. So, we talked about the idea of obviously the person being, an employee and then providing them with not just compensation, but there could be some kind of bonus structure based on number of files. There could be an upside as it pertains to growth of the, the company in general, that kind of stuff. So exactly how it should be structured. And even just from a company structural standpoint as it pertains to my company's corporation. Are they an employee? Are they independent contractor? All that stuff I think would be valuable for listeners to hear your take on it. And then I know we've chatted about it, but I know it's always good to get a good reminder on exactly how you think it might be best to structure it.
Sure. Okay. There's pros and obviously all this stuff has pros and cons. The thing about contractors are a great short-term solution. I don't believe they scale like a employee. I really don't. And I can give you some examples of that. But the thing about a contractor is if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, you just want to get somebody to come in and do fulfillment. I know you're ambitious and you're the kind of guy who's like, I'm aiming to hit a home run. And so I know that to do that, I got to put a team around me. You're going to go for that underwriter versus just necessarily a fulfillment. So it can work. The only challenge will be is if they start working for you exclusively. So we'll go through the different options. Let's say first off, you share. So you share somebody. It's you and a couple other brokers, and we got brokers that are doing this. You share it. That could be a contractor relationship. It's pretty good and you could justify that with CRA that, hey, this person works for 3 or 4 people. But what happens in these scenarios is everybody who gets these 3 or 4 brokers all get more time back because of the fulfillment and they all get busier. And when they all get busier, eventually this fulfillment person's puts their hand up and says, hey, tap, I'm getting overwhelmed here. And so what I've seen happen typically is that fulfillment person ends up going to work for one of those people. Taylor, who's on the other episode, that's what happened to him. He shared somebody now. They work for him exclusively. Mm-hmm. So if the person that you share, you are like, I don't want to let that person go, make sure that you are the one they're going to pick. It's kind of like we know divorce is coming.
They're going to outgrow that split.
You're everybody's going to grow, and that person's going to get full. And so there's basically we know a divorce is coming, and who are they going to live with?
I've learned in businesses. Yeah, I've learned in building businesses as well in the past that I always now through error take the long-term mindset whereby if I understand that my goal is here, I do not want to have any short-term solutions, and I don't want no patches. I only want
Right.
full-on repairs and fixes, no patches. So yeah, I would agree
Right.
that already just hearing you talk that through already makes sense to me that share contractor, no, share, no. I could already see that right away.
Right. But for some people, I'm just saying, if you're
Yeah.
listening and you're in that
Makes
situation, a divorce is coming. And so you get to this, if you plan ahead for it and make sure that person loves you the most
Yeah.
and treat them really well, you're going to get to keep them.
win,
And then
you win the prize. Yeah.
you win the prize, but that's for sure coming every time. And so then, but now when you get into a situation where it's someone working for you and you want to do piecework, but they're only working for you and you're dictating their hours, you're going to have a heck of a time with CRA, and you can do it. So like you can do whatever you want. It just depends on if you get audited. But I know mortgage brokers that have been on my show, that are friends of mine, that have done this. And then 2 years later, 3-4 years later, CRA comes and says, that looks like an employment relationship. You owe us CPP, EI, and OAS for the last 3 years for you and the employee.
Yeah, of course.
And the employee's now gone, and you're not going to get the money from them. And so now you're on the hook. And so the other piece about having an employee is that I want to dictate their hours. I want to know that if they're between this time and this time, if I reach out, they're going to be available, versus this piecework. And they're like, oh, I'm picking up my kids, and that's cool. But like, I can't run a business if I don't know when I can rely on you.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think an employee structure makes more sense. It's an expense to the business. And then you layer in some kind of a bonus structure. And there's many ways to do bonus structures, and I think it can either be based on file. I don't think volume is the way to do it, because you don't want to incentivize them to ignore your smaller clients. I like personally, I like file number, or I like gross revenue for the company. So like company revenue is like gets to X. We go from here to there. You get Y. You get the Y benefit. So that's how I would typically structure something like that in terms of and plus, if you're going to steal somebody from the bank, you ain't getting them on piecework. They are not going to leave a salary job to come work for you piecework. They're going to say, no, I need to know I'm guaranteed X, but I have opportunity to create X plus Y.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense.
And that's how you're going to attract a better person ultimately.
Love it. That's.
But there's a commitment on your part.
Yeah, I love the idea of the full-time employee, bonuses layered in there based on file count, and then gross revenue kind of tiered structure to some extent. I love that. That makes a ton of sense to me. Yeah.
So I think that would. And then, so have you given any thought to sort of a salary range that you think you're going to need to do for this?
Yeah, I have. You and I spoke a little bit about that. I mean, basing it on what you would expect somebody that's going to be working to this extent to have. I think we're probably in the neighborhood of like, 70,000 plus range, $80,000 in and around there. It'll all depend on exactly the type of load they're going to have and the hours I expect of them. But for me to have complete control of them and for them to come away from somewhere else and have high expectations, it's probably going to be in that range.
Yeah, 70 to 80. And then ideally, if there's an opportunity to get to 100 based on, like growth and stuff. Bonuses, then the way we do it at our company, and I know Denise does this as well. She does like an open book management. You don't have to do this, but it's basically they share the books, and then they see the profitability, and then as the profit, they get a piece of the upside of the profit. There's a minimum threshold of profit. So, and then above that, a percent goes to the staff, a percent goes to the owners, and a percent goes into growth. And so that's another model and we do that at our brokerage, and it's worked really well, because then you get ownership mindset, because they go, oh, like they don't waste money. They're not like, since Denise started doing this, people aren't like, they're not paying for appraisals as much, because before it was like, oh, who cares? I'll pay for your appraisal. Now it's like, no, hold on. That's out of my pocket too.
I love that.
So the behavior is different, right? What happens is the behavior is different because of the comp. Like Charlie Munger says this, the most important thing to get right is the incentives. And so if you get the incentives wrong, you're going to incentivize the wrong behavior. And so in her case, it does help if you have something that's tied to revenue versus just files, because what about buy downs? So now you do files, and then they start going, oh, we'll just buy it on this rate and that rate. And you're like, well, shoot, this is, because they want to get file count up.
That's
and
brilliant.
Even they're an honest person will still do it, because it's just human nature.
That's brilliant.
Right?
Yeah. People would never think about those things. That's brilliant right there. I love that. And I do. And you know what, too, the truth is that I love my staff, my employees at all my companies. I love them so much as family. And I really, really do want them I want to see them grow and succeed and develop and make as much money as they can, and just have as much freedom as they can and enjoy life as much as they can. So yeah, I mean, I want to empower them with as much tools as possible to succeed and love it. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So so I guess my question for you, and do you have any questions you want to throw at me while we wrap this up, but when is your job posting going to go live? Because I feel like that's will create the most attention for you, but then there's also going to be the time of doing the interviews. Right?
My expectation is that, like today, right now, as you mentioned, is the 21st. So as an expectation, I'd like to be able to get it all done and wrapped up and posted by the end of the weekend, so that would be like, 25th, 26th, so that, it's out there and up there and posted before the end of the month. And as I mentioned, my goal is kind of to make sure I can have enough time to receive them, review them, filter them, start interviewing people like really seriously so that we can get them hired in the first quarter. Yeah.
So here's another hack. So we recently hired because we've done all our own hiring. Like I had a program before. We used to hire unlicensed assistants, and Lorraine, who worked for me, she hired over 100 of them from mortgage brokers, and so she got really good at. But a licensed assistant or underwriters are different; they're a more technical role. But so we recently hired a contractor, and so we pay her $1,500. She does all the job posting, she does all the initial interviews, she records the interviews, and then gives those to me to just the ones that she thinks are worth. And then I look at those recordings at 1.5 speed, and I can then decide if I do a full interview. And then there's another, if it's successful, we hire someone, I think it's another, I don't know, a couple grand, but as a thought, it's up to you. But like, that could be a way for you to basically not have to do the 80% of the work. You just come in for the last.
I love that.
And I would, so I'll connect with you offline about this person. But like, so we're hiring an underwriter coach, and they're running the whole campaign for us. We've told them what we want. We've given them the initial stuff. And then her job is to run the postings, run the ads, do the interviews, and only give me the recordings of the interviews that she thinks are worth it. And then I get to decide instead of, because like, dude, I already thinking about the number of people you're going to have to talk to. You've already got a business to run. It could be very painful for you to
complete gold, massive value here. That is so good. I mean, I never would have even thought of that. So that's brilliant. Thank you for that. That is super valuable.
Yeah, I'll connect you with that HR contractor. Anybody listening, if you're interested in that, you can always hit me up or hit up Nate, because he'll have that information too. Nate, man, I love these conversations. This is so fun. And this one was me talking more. These are not just going to be Scott talking. Because Nate is an absolute killer when it comes to leads and marketing and stuff he's doing. And we're going to get into all that stuff. But right now we're just solving the next most immediate problem, which is we got to get this underwriter, because otherwise you're going to have no capacity to go out and continue to grow and build it to 100 million.
Yeah. And you know what, too? A good point. I mean, I'm an open book, so we're going to get into a lot of fun stuff. Folks can learn to build their business in a lot of different ways and generate a ton of business. And also, if anybody that is listening does want to reach out to me and ask any questions about anything at all that I am doing with you, building the business, growing it, how we're operating things here at BRX and all that kind of stuff, reach out, because I'd be more than happy to answer questions and talk to people about my client journey and how I've structured it to be able to get to this point.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate you. I will see you in the next episode.
Awesome. Killer. Let's do it.
Hey, thanks again for listening. And hopefully you were inspired about how your next hire and what you want to do. And again, I believe I've made every mistake imaginable on the hiring. I only shared some of them on this episode. I could probably do a whole episode on the hiring mistakes I've made. But the point is that we want to give you something that you can apply to your mortgage business. And a couple of things for you, if you're listening to this. One, the one big thing that I'd say that most people neglect in the mortgage business is mindset. And Nate has an incredible mindset. You can tell 25 years in, personal trainer. He's a trainer. The guy's fit, he's jacked. And so he understands self-discipline and mindset. But a lot of times I know that for me, there's areas I've struggled in. And so we started a morning mortgage mindset daily. And it's something that we run Monday to Friday. And we, instead of going wide on topics and always like on social media, you're getting new things, we're going deep. And this series right now we're working with is a book called The Big Leap. And we actually have the author coming on one of our upcoming, by the time you listen to this, it'll already happened, but we brought the author in to talk and do a Q&A. And man, I'm telling you, we're getting a ton of brokers showing up to these calls. It's been so amazing and life-giving for me. If you're interested, hit me up on that. Hit the button like on my social. I'll send you the info on it. I'd love to have you come join us for that, because if you make a shift in your mindset, everything else becomes possible. Everything else becomes, you'll actually do it. And the strategy and tactics, yes, they matter, but not more than mindset, in my personal opinion. And last thing I'd say is that if you're also, I've got an email list. Every week I put an email called Peckford's Playbook. I share some of the insights, some of the stuff that's going on. If you're into mortgages, if you want to scale your mortgage business, totally free for anybody, go hit me up on social on that, or click on this episode. You can get on that Peckford's Playbook. Thank you for listening. And as I always say, there's no problem in your mortgage business someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is who's got the solution. Our hope is that this podcast provides some of those solutions. Thanks for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.